Hey guys, I'm Chris Bach and a very warm welcome to Fretworks. Now, I would be lying if I said anything other than the thought of making this video. It's kind of been playing on my mind for a little bit and filling me with dread. Now, I will get onto why in a minute, but in case you hadn't guessed from the introduction, this is all about the incredible new Red Mist Mark IV from Redbeard Effects. Now, just to give you a quick bit of context on why it's made me so bloody nervous. Again, in case you hadn't guessed from the introduction, this is a distortion pedal. Now, I'm known for a few things maybe, but I'll argue that a distortion pedal or distortion pedals in general definitely aren't amongst those. And any time in my life, really, in recent memory, that I've used anywhere near the amount of gain that you will probably hear me playing with today, it's actually been through chaining a couple of different overdrive pedals together. And even then, probably not getting into the sort of territory that I'll be covering today. So, in that respect, it's been a little bit out of my wheelhouse, to be honest, and it's made me slightly nervous as to whether I'm really capable of getting the best out of this pedal. So, why are you playing it? I guess that's a very obvious and very valid question, and to give you an answer, it's kind of the worst kept secret in the industry, to be honest, at this point, is that this pedal is actually the collaborative brainchild of not only Mr. Adrian Thorpe of Thorpe Effects. Obviously, I'm big mates with Adrian, and I'm a massive fan of his pedals. I've been using the Gunshot, or the Dane, or the Heavy Water for a good few years now. I actually did a video with a Deep Oggian as well, which is pretty much the only chorus pedal I've ever tried that I truly loved. Just a great make of pedals and a very good friend of mine. As I said, it's a collaborative design between him and Mr. Mikey Demas. Now, if you've heard of Mikey, it will no doubt be through Skindred, the kind of metal phenomenon that they are. Incredible band, and they are also Welsh, so brownie points for that. Now, Mikey set about trying to create a pedal, as far as I would understand it, that really nailed his Skindred tone, very much based on high gain orange stacks, but was kind of capable of getting that sound through whatever kind of amp he was provided with at a festival, maybe, where you're using rented backline. Maybe you've specified a high gain orange and you've turned up and to be met with a Hot Rod Deluxe or a Deluxe Reverb or a Twin or something like that. Great amps in their own right, but not necessarily amps that you would associate with that sound. Mikey's been carrying around a bag of, kind of Swiss Army knife pedals for the past couple of years to make sure he can kind of dig himself out of whatever hole he's landed in. But with Adrian, he's sort of set about creating the ultimate pedal to really nail that Skindred sound, irrespective of wherever he is and what he's been given. So the first thing I noticed about this pedal when taking it out of the box and plugging it in is there is undoubtedly a slightly fuzzy edge to distortion. Now, honestly, to be on the level, this isn't something which would ordinarily appeal to me, especially in an overdrive pedal. It's the kind of thing that I would try and dial out. However, what I have found, especially when using some lower tunings, it is absolutely invaluable. It brings back that high end and that crispness and that aggressive punch that you really need if you're going to be playing music like this, especially when you're going to be down-tuned. Now, the clip you heard at the introduction was me playing No One Knows by the Queens of the Stone Age, tuned down to C standard, and if you didn't have that slightly more aggressive edge on the distortion, that wouldn't work in any way, shape or form. Now, I'm going to tune back up and grab my Telecaster, and we're going to have another Welsh band, funnily enough, in the shape of Budgie, and jam out on Breadvan for a little bit. And again, even with single coils, which I guess are inherently a little bit brighter, it's never harsh, it's never in your face, it's just enough to give you that sort of crunch over the edge that would really help you stand out of a mix and really kind of do that kind of metal thing, I guess. Sounds a little bit like this. Now, switching back over to the Revstar, we're going to scoop the mids a little bit. Also worth mentioning that the EQ controls on this are, quite frankly, incredible. There's such a range within those that, again, really allows you to sort of fine-tune it to whatever amp you are plugged into or whatever sound it is that you're trying to go for. Now, funnily enough, I've actually been listening to a fair amount of the Smashing Pumpkins recently. My wife's turned me on to Siamese Dream. Obviously, the first track on that album, Cherub Rock, after the clean section in the introduction, I think is a big muff or some description being kicked in. Obviously, a very kind of mid-scoop fuzz pedal, which, again, if you dial the mids back on this pedal and crank the gain, you're going to get into very similar territory. It does an incredibly convincing impression of that. Now, moving on to something a little bit more quintessentially metal, I guess, whatever that is, we're going to jam out to some Metallica. Again, forgive me for the dodgy playing. It still blows my mind that James Hetfield is capable of doing all of this, but with downstroke. So I'm going to alternate pick it just because it's the only way I know how to do it. Hopefully get sort of in the ballpark. I wasn't really trying to nail the Master of Puppets sound so much as I was just trying to get a kind of cool, aggressive metal tone. Sounds a little bit like this. Last but definitely not least, this is undoubtedly going to be more gain than you will ever ordinarily hear me playing with. But I would argue that even though it is so out of my wheelhouse, it's very usable, very intuitive under the fingers, really sort of dials you into playing with that kind of mindset, I guess, the kind of squealy harmonics and all that kind of stuff. So out of my comfort zone. But again, I guess the idea behind Adrian sending me this pedal is that if I can make it sound somewhat decent, you guys, if you're into this style of music, are going to be able to absolutely slay it. So let's have a little bit of Aussie. So there you have it. Hopefully I've done this pedal some kind of justice. As I said, it is a truly magnificent pedal if you're looking for that kind of sound. It's a little bit out of my wheelhouse, but it's nice to throw yourself in at the deep end every now and then and see what it inspires or see if it brings anything different out in your playing. As you saw at the start of Cherub Rock by the Smashing Pumpkins, that was my bass clean tone for all of this video. Again, I've heard a couple of clips of this pedal being used not only into clean amps, but into an already breaking up, already dirty amp. My thinking behind using it into a clean amp was, when you've got a pedal capable of this much gain and this much kind of EQ control, makes sense to run it into something which is a little bit more neutral in the first place. But again, there are a couple of clips out there of it being run into already dirty platforms if you want to hear what that sounds like. But to my ears at least, this really flourishes when you're giving it as much chance as possible to do its thing. Hopefully, that kind of gives you some idea of what it sounds like. Again, apologies for the dodgy playing throughout this video. Adrian, Mikey, I hope I've done it justice. As ever, I've been Chris Buck. This has been Friday Fretworks. A massive thank you to watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell icon, and I shall see you next week for another episode of Friday Fretworks. Cheers, guys. Take care, and I shall see you soon.